welcome. This is the Quarterly Ketchup, the first one of January 2023. We are recording this, so as we say, if you don't want to be on camera, you don't want to be in the recording, please do put yourself, switch your camera off, put yourself on mute, and use the meeting chat to ask any questions. As we were saying, my name's Sarah Fenner. My name is quite unique in this field, so if you want to know more about me, do feel free to look me up. I have been, as Quarterly said, working with Microsoft 365 since it first came out in 2011, and with Teams since the launch of that as well. So, and few years before that, I'm not going to tell you how many because you'll age me. So we get the information for this Ketchup, for these webinars, from a variety of different sources. We use the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, where Microsoft posts messages on an ongoing basis as to the updates that are coming through that they're releasing. We also use the Microsoft 365 roadmap, which gives us pre-warning of when releases are going to be made. The Microsoft Tech Community blogs help us investigate those new features and changes as they're announced. Then the Microsoft Learn documentation, which used to be called Microsoft Docs, is all of the technical reference materials as well. We've then got the news stories that Microsoft publish, and when there's been a conference in the quarter that we're reviewing, we also reference the book of news for that conference. Now, since the last conference was just before the final update of last year, there is no book of news in this particular webinar. It's also worthwhile reminding you that Microsoft call the cloud evergreen. And what this means is that the product is continuously changing, continuously evolving. So I have to pick a date to build this webinar from, and that is the date that I'm working with. Things might have changed since then. In fact, I know for a fact there's been a couple of things announced since then, but not released. Okay, so in this webinar, we rely very heavily on the Microsoft 365 roadmap. That's how I get all of my statistics as to what has changed. And I took the statistics for this quarter's Ketchup on the 8th of January. Sunday, the 8th of January at 3 p.m. my time, so local to the UK, so UTC. Okay, at that point in time, there were 1,418 items on the roadmap. You can see that number there. Okay, now this does change. Microsoft do remove items from the roadmap as they're released. So there were those 1,500 items. Of which 1,188 related to what we call the worldwide cloud. So there are specific features that are for government cloud or for education specific environments. And I've excluded those focused features from the webinar. So we're looking at 1,188 topics. Since last October, 206 new items have been added, 140 have been launched, and we have 297 due for launch by the end of March. Okay, so that's quite a lot of additional features. Okay, that's of the 1,188 that are across the worldwide cloud. And they break down like this. Now, if you're struggling to see the exact detail on the slide, we do publish a reference guide to go with this webinar that if you've registered will be sent out to you, and it does have this graphic in it. So please, if you're struggling to view any of the images, please don't feel that you you have to kind of get your magnifying glass out or your binoculars or anything. You will be able to review them in a bit more detail after the event. Okay, so the majority of the features still relate to Microsoft Teams. Oh, got an echo coming back at me. Someone's got the... it's gone. Brilliant. Managed to mute yourself. So, as I say, the majority do relate to Microsoft Teams, but we have got a good portion coming through from security, compliance, information protection, and SharePoint and OneDrive. So between the productivity apps of Microsoft Office, Teams, security, compliance, and file management, SharePoint and OneDrive, that's a good 3/4 almost of the updates. One of the things I always get asked on these sort of events is, why can't we have an exact date when something is going to be released? So I thought, as this was the first catch-up of the year, our first quarterly catch-up webinar, I'd just take a minute to have a look at the update cycle that Microsoft run through in Microsoft 365 generally. So during the design phase, Microsoft tend to make an announcement at some point that they're working on a feature. Now, to be honest, that tends to be once they know they can deliver the feature, once they've done their initial proof of concept and they've got some initial code in place. Apart from that announcement, the information is covered by a non-disclosure agreement, so anyone who knows about it can't talk about it publicly. We then go into what's called a private preview, and during this stage, as the public, we tend to know about these features. We know that Microsoft are working on them, but we don't have the detail. Okay, and the terms you'll hear referring to that kind of phase is you'll hear about TAP, which is the Teams Acceptance Program, which is early adopters for Microsoft Teams. You'll hear about dog food, which is internal use within Microsoft. And you'll also hear Microsoft use the term early ring. Now, these are people who are getting early access to the features, and they, to be fair, they do tend to break every so often. So those early adopters, while they have visibility of the features, they don't tend to be quite as stable and robust. One of the advantages of being a Microsoft MVP is we sometimes get to see the features during this phase. So as soon as they start being released into public preview, we've already had sight of them, even though we haven't been able to talk about them or even mention that we know about them. It makes it easier for us to then help customers adopt those features. So we go through public preview where people can sign up for the features and use them, and then into targeted release, which is if your tenant to your Microsoft 365 environment is set to have the features released to it as early as possible. This is not a testing phase. We finish with the testing phase once we move into targeted release. And then we go on to general availability. Now, in that targeted release and general availability phase, Microsoft are updating different servers all around the globe at different points in time so that they don't break everything at once if something doesn't quite work. At least that's the plan. Fingers crossed. So you do sometimes get variation in how quickly those features are released. Now, it might be it's a couple of days between everyone in targeted release having it. It has been up to 3 months before it's rolled through everybody. Depends quite what updates they need to do on the servers to get that feature out to us. Hopefully that helps you understand a little bit more about how Microsoft are doing the updates and why we're always a little bit woolly as to when you're going to get the exact features in your hands to use because of the way that update works. So what new features are we going to talk about? Well, last time I predicted this list of features, And actually, only the ones that I've highlighted in purple there have actually been released. We do have Teams Premium in preview, but all of the other components are not yet available. Some of them are coming sooner rather than later. Let's just say that. Okay, if you're watching this on the recording in a couple of weeks' time, there might be one or two of these that have been released since we recorded this. Okay, so this is actually the list of features I want to introduce to you that have been released since October 2022. That is far too small a piece of text for you to read on this slide. We're going to go through each section in turn, and I'll make them a bit bigger as we go through, so you can actually have a chance of reading them. So starting with Outlook. So Outlook and Exchange, our email and personal information management system. We've got 4 features released: cloud signatures, loop components, message reactions, and contact. I have to be careful, I can't always say this well. Contact deduplication. Thank you. Okay, so I don't know about you, but I absolutely hate, as I jump from my computer to a different computer to the web version, having to set up my email signatures every single time. So we now have cloud signatures. Now, the one thing this doesn't cover is your mobile devices. Sorry. It will come, but at the moment your mobile devices, the technology doesn't support actually pulling them down from the cloud. So it will come into the apps in due course. But basically set up your signatures however you want to, either in the web version of Outlook or in the desktop version of Outlook, however you would normally set that up, and it will be available in the other area as well. Okay, and then if you get a new computer, you just open Outlook, sign in, and your signature's still there. Yay, I don't have to go and copy it off an old email anymore. Okay, so the next feature I want to talk to you about is loop components. Now, if you've not come across loop components, I'll explain a little bit about them, but they have been in Teams chat for for just over a year now, about 13, 14 months. So Microsoft Loop is a family of products that is going to provide us with the ability to collaborate on little snippets of information. Rather than having to share a whole document, what we can do is put this component, this bit of information, into an email, into a Teams message, into an Office document, onto a whiteboard. And that component stays live. We can still edit it even after we've sent the message. Okay, and we now have these components in Outlook. So that gives us 2 places they now released: Teams chat and Outlook messages. And you can copy them between the 2. So if I start in Outlook, I can copy it into a chat message in Teams, and it's still live, and it's still the same information, and anyone who's got it can edit it. Going forward, we'll get a feature called Loop Pages, get it right, where we have different Loop components pulled together, and then the Loop app, which will allow us to pull together all these different pages of different snippets of collaborative information with documents and other features that we might need to manage a project. Now, there is going to be some overlap in that with Microsoft Teams. That we wait to see exactly how it's delivered and what it gives us when it comes out. But for the moment, we just have these little snippets inside the messaging themselves. So I did a little video here of working with a loop component so you can see what it's like. So on the left-hand side, I've got one user who is creating and editing this loop component in an email that has been sent. On the other side, we've got the recipient editing and viewing that same component in the email they've received. Okay, so two different people. I know it shows the same person, but I was logged in as two people, I promise. So two different people working on that same task list in this case within an email, even though that email had been sent. Okay, so it's not sat in a shared drafts or anything like that. It's a fully sent email. I think you'll find a lot of really good uses for that, not just in email, but Teams chat and into the other areas when it releases there as well. Also released, but currently only supported in Outlook for the web, but coming to other Outlook experiences, are reactions in messages. I personally feel this isn't quite as useful as reacting to a chat message because I don't get any kind of notification. I have to go and look at the message to see the reaction. So I have to know to look at the message to see the reaction. I want some kind of notification that someone has reacted to my email rather than it just being there if I go and look at it. But I quite like the concept because the number of times I want to just go, yes, okay, to an email, and it feels a waste sending a whole email for that. So just giving a thumbs up, an acknowledgement, it's quite a useful feature, I feel. Just needs perhaps a little bit more. Watch this space, shall we say. We've also got this handling of duplicated contacts. Okay, that shouldn't say contract deduplication, that should say contact. That's what I get for working on a Sunday. There we go, fixed. And what that allows us to do is when we're looking at somebody's contact card, you know, you get an email, you hover over their name and you can see their contact details popping up in a little card. If you've got multiple copies of a contact for that person in your address book, it will offer to merge them for you. It's currently only supported in Outlook for the web, and when you get the supporting documentation for the webinar, there is a link to more information as to exactly how that works. Okay, so that was Outlook. I am going quite fast. If anyone does have questions, please do feel free to either post them in the meeting chat or use the raise hands if you want to come off mute and ask them. Otherwise, I'm going to assume you're all happy to save your questions till the end. But if you do have a question as we're going through, please do feel free. Moving on to Microsoft Teams. We've got the preview of Teams Premium. We've got some enhancements to scheduling within the calendar for both ordinary meetings and webinars. The activity feed, read-only to unread toggle, more reactions because you can never get enough emojis in your life, obviously. A feature called Excel Live to work with your files with your colleagues inside a meeting. Delayed delivery or scheduled send. Deleting of chats, and also an improved meeting experience across web and desktop. So first of all, Teams Premium. So Microsoft announced Teams Premium at Ignite in October last year, and it is an add-on to Microsoft Teams with some premium features that not everyone's going to need. If, like me, you do a lot of webinars like this, then it may be something you're going to need. It's definitely something I'm going to be able to use in my job. But the features in here fall into 5 main categories. We've got meeting customization, so we can have a branded lobby when you're waiting to join the meeting. We can have customization of colour schemes and backgrounds that are available in the meeting as well. Meeting protection features such as end-to-end encryption, sensitivity labels on meetings to protect the content and stop people copying the chat. And also a facility of putting a watermark on the screen. So if you were to take a screenshot of what we're sharing now, your email address would be all over the screenshot that you take. Now, if I was to take a screenshot, I would have my email address on. So we're not sharing your email address, but that watermarking is just to capture who has taken the information out of the meeting and shared it, especially with confidential meetings. Yeah. We've got artificial intelligence features such as picking out times in the meeting where you are mentioned and marking those in the recording so you can jump to those points in time. And also extracting a task list automatically based on what was said in the meeting. So analysing what people are saying and generating a task list as a result. The AI features are not going to come out straight away. They're going to be later this year, but those are some of the most exciting ones, obviously. More enhancement to webinars. So if you run webinars where people sign up to them, you can set capacity, approve, sign up to the webinar so that you can control who has access, who gets the link to join. And also virtual appointments. As a result of COVID, we've seen a lot more service organisations actually holding their appointments over Microsoft Teams. Okay, you might have heard this also referred to as virtual visits, you know, your GP, your doctor's appointment over a Teams meeting, that sort of thing. So a lot more analytics and control over those in Teams Premium than in the standard Teams license. So again, not everyone is going to need any of these features. Microsoft has said this is going to be $10 US per person per month, but some of the features are unlocked when the meeting organizer has the features. So if you want to read more about those, there is some links in the supporting documentation for the website, for the webinar, and you will find lots more being written about it and spoken about it as we go forward, and as it releases, we'll visit that again in future catch-ups. So pop out. This has probably had the biggest impact on me of any of the features I'm talking about today. The number of times I go to create a meeting and then go, oh, what was in my calendar on that day? And have to close the creating the meeting or switch to Outlook. It's now in a separate window, so I can just move it out the way and see my calendar. Oh, to have a brain that worked again. If you create webinars in Microsoft Teams where you have, rather than inviting people to attend the meeting, you ask them to sign up for the meeting. That's what Microsoft term as a webinar. In here, we have a new dialog box for creating webinars. Okay, you pick it up from your new meeting button and choose webinar. That's how you build them. And this dialog box is a little bit more streamlined. It's a bit more of a step-by-step guide through the process of setting it up. And obviously this will have premium features embedded into it if you've got the premium license. So if you don't have a premium license, you might find things like capacity of the webinar are greyed out. You can't set them because you need the Teams premium license for those features. But it's the same dialog box for everyone. Okay, that should be there today if you wanted to have a look at it. Or you might need to wait a week or two till your next update comes into Microsoft Teams. Okay. As with everything, though, I should, just before I move on, I should say that this isn't available in all scenarios. Administrators of Microsoft 365 do have a lot of control over exactly which features you get and how they behave. So I'm talking about a general environment where your organization hasn't locked down or blocked particular features. So your administrators can actually control whether this feature is available to you. And I've included a link in the documentation about how that is done for those of you who are those administrators. The unread toggle on the activity feed. Now, we've always had the ability to filter the activity feed, this little funnel icon up at the top corner here that most of you won't have realized is a funnel, does allow you to filter the activity feed in Microsoft Teams. Okay, but it's a bit of a faff to go and click that and then pick unread. So now we have this little toggle at the top, so we can switch it to only show us the messages we haven't read. Works on mobile too. If you use Teams on your mobile, you've got that little unread toggle on your activity feed there as well. Now, have you ever wanted to react to a Teams message with a light bulb or even Clippy? I mean, who can not want to react to a Teams chat message with the good old paperclip, Mr. Clippy? Well, good news, you can. You now can. You've got all those expanded reactions. Obviously, there are some in here that are not work appropriate. So you've still got to use a little bit of common sense, especially if you work in a very formal environment or especially in education. I used to be a teacher, so I say this with the greatest respect. The little darlings that we have in our classrooms will take anything out of context that they possibly can. Okay, so just be careful how you pick these. And we've got the main 3 reactions, the thumbs up, the heart, etc. And then the little blue icon at the end just gives me the ability to go and find extra reactions. And the reactions that we've put on the messages are then totaled up across the bottom. How many people have put which reaction on to the message. Now, this is one of those sets of screenshots that you're probably going to want to enhance on your own screen when you get the guidance. But from the share button in a Teams meeting, you now not only have the option to share a PowerPoint presentation as PowerPoint Live, but you also have the Excel Live option as well. When you share an Excel file into a meeting like this, it puts it inside the main meeting stage, but everyone in the meeting can edit it collaboratively at the same time in that window. So they don't have to have it open separately. But as the second screenshot here shows, they will all have access to the file. So you are giving them permission to edit the file. So please be aware of that if you're looking at something sensitive. Edit includes copy, of course. Now this is what it looks like inside a meeting. Yeah, I've got my Excel file here in my meeting window with my meeting controls across the top, and everyone in the meeting can edit that equally. The red banner that you see, the red square that you see around the outside, is the shared bit, because the toolbar is my toolbar. If I change the toolbar, I'm not changing it for everyone. Okay, so they don't see your toolbar, they only see the document. I made that mistake the first time. I thought this is great for Excel training. Yeah, they can't follow your screen. You've still got to share your screen. Scheduled send. As we mentioned right at the start, today I'm working unusual hours for me for the UK. So if I needed to send a message to a colleague and I didn't want to interrupt them at this time of day, then I could send it at once they finish, once they're back in work, at a time of day that's more appropriate. So rather than just clicking the little paper aeroplane to send the message, I right click on the paper aeroplane and set the date and time that I want to send the message. If you are doing a scheduled send, I would actually recommend that you open up the Teams chat message box into the format version. So that first button under the chat message, the A with the little pencil, expands the message compose box so you can write a longer message. Enter doesn't send it. It gives you a new line. And if you're intending to set the message and send it at a particular point in time, you don't want to accidentally hit enter and send it. So if you open up the message box, then that means you've got to go to the paper aeroplane icon to send it. And you're more likely to remember to right click on it. Deleting the meeting chat. As a user, I live my life in Microsoft Teams. I came home from Ireland on the 13th of March 2020, having delivered a training course there, and I don't think I've left this chair ever since. Slight exaggeration. I have had holidays, and I have been to a couple of in-person conferences, but I'm not training, not really training face-to-face anymore. Okay. So my Teams chat gets incredibly busy and there are things in there I really don't need to be able to look at, and it gets too cluttered. So I've always had the option to hide that chat, but then when I do a search or someone posts a new message, it tends to come back. I don't want it to come back. So I now have the opportunity to delete it. Now, before anyone panics and thinks, hang on a minute, users are deleting all their chat messages, what happened to compliance and retention? What the users are doing is deleting their visible copy of that conversation. Not one message, the whole conversation. That doesn't remove it from the other parties. They can still see those messages. It doesn't remove the compliance copy or the retained copy. We've still got those. We can still find those with e-discovery because they're still protected data. So it just means that if I now do a search for something, I won't find the deleted messages, the deleted chat. I'll find hidden chats, but not deleted. The other thing is if you organise the meeting, you can't delete the chat. Sorry. If you're the meeting organiser, you're stuck with it forever. So yeah, hiding is your only option there. Meeting interface enhancements. Now, I'll be perfectly honest. I don't like the new more menu. Let me just go back a couple of slides to the old more menu. This is the new one. It's very short. The old one was much more like this, a very long one with all of the options listed down. Okay. I prefer a long list, but everyone else I've spoken to prefers the short list, so I'm overruled. Can't have everything your own way. But what is great is that if I'm in a meeting in the Teams desktop app or in Teams through the web browser, that toolbar's the same. I don't have the silly one floating in the middle of the screen blocking everything in the web version anymore. It's docked up at the top. and it's exactly the same layout. Okay, there's a couple of things about it that I do also really like, without being rude to the team new toolbar. I like the fact that the raise hands has been separated from the reactions. Okay, so you can raise your hands as a separate button. I like the fact that the view button has been brought over with all the other buttons, rather than sitting on its own on the far left-hand corner, hiding, so no one could find it. Yeah. I like the fact that help is really obvious at the bottom of the more menu as well. And as different speech and language features start rolling out, we've got more control over those as well. There is a feature coming for sign language view that may not have rolled out to you yet, where you can set specific people who attend your meeting who are sign language interpreters, and they are given premium space in the meeting automatically. Everyone else is smaller, because in a tiny little box, and I'm not a sign language interpreter, so forgive me, but in a tiny little box, if people are moving their hands around and you've got problems with the connection and things like that, you've got no way of following those hands. Okay. So that's really useful. And also, if you make heavy use of the closed captions, you can set those up to be on by default as well. So again, some really nice enhancements depending on how you use that meeting environment. That was Teams. How am I doing? Oh, I'm getting there. I'm almost on track with going through my slides. Timing wise, that's great. Okay, so now we're going to look at the security aspects. So Microsoft Defender and the compliance access, Microsoft Purview, and information governance as well. And to be honest, it's been quite a slow time these last 3 months in terms of new features in this area. There are a lot more looking forward, but we've got the release of complex conditions in our data loss prevention policies, which are really helpful. We've got enhancements to data loss prevention to DLP policies, where they will now use trainable classifiers, and we can give feedback from the Content Explorers. We're looking at what data has been classified as sensitive information, and also from data loss prevention alerts as well. You can set up Adobe Acrobat to allow you to apply sensitivity labels. Okay, and also we've got an increase of the limits around the disposition approval feature in the records management toolset as well. And for those of us who work in a multi-account environment, we also have the ability to support passwordless sign-in for multiple accounts from a single mobile phone, but only on iOS. If you're on Android, you've got to wait a little bit longer. Okay, so let's look at each of these in turn. Complex conditions. In the past, when I created a data loss prevention policy, I would set a series of conditions. It contains a credit card number, contains somebody's name, and it contains, I don't know, and it's shared with someone external. Okay, we now have the ability, instead of just and, you see we can put the dot in not, we can switch on not. So, and it's not being shared with somebody external. Or it's got credit card information in, but it doesn't have someone's full name in it. Okay, so we can do and does not match this condition. The and is a drop-down box and we can change it to or. So it has a credit card number or a bank account number, for example. Yeah. So it means I've got to build far fewer data loss prevention rules because the conditions can be more complicated, which makes it easier to manage because you've got fewer rules to work through. One of the conditions we can set, rather than it just being sensitive information, now uses the trainable classifiers. You may not have realised as well that you can actually pick up a sensitivity label or a retention label as well as a trainable classifier, not just sensitive information types, to set your data loss prevention. So just taking a step back, my DLP policies are there to stop accidental or malicious oversharing of content. Yep, it's not to stop deletion. Data loss is sharing, not deletion. Yep, and we can trigger the rules around this sharing and how people can share or not share, because usually we're building this to block the sharing or sending of information. Okay, we can trigger that based on sensitive information types, sensitivity labels that have been manually or automatically assigned, retention labels, again, that have been manually or automatically assigned to the file, and now these trainable classifiers. If you've not used a trainable classifier before, you've not come across them, these are AI-driven document identifiers. So they'll look for a resume, they'll look for a contract, they'll look for a financial document. Okay, and they're not looking for keywords in the document as such. They're looking for the characteristics of the document to actually work out what the document is. So these trainable classifiers are using, as I say, AI to try and work out what type of document it is. Okay. This is a Microsoft 365 E5 feature, trainable classifiers. So it won't be available for everyone, and we'll have included some references in the notes if you're not familiar with the feature. So rather unusual to have a screenshot from a non-Microsoft product in my presentation here, but this is Adobe Acrobat DC, which is the Acrobat tool that allows you to create and edit PDFs. And now the Protect toolbar allows us to pick up a sensitivity label. So we don't have to create the file and then go and apply the sensitivity label in the container. Yeah, in the SharePoint site or the team or the OneDrive, we can apply it as we're working. It takes a little bit of setting up. There's some registry edits required to set this up. It's not a 2-second tick a box type setup, unfortunately, but it is very powerful and simple to use once it's up and running. I've got a slide with no pictures on it. It's all text. And I'm going to commit the cardinal training sin of reading the slide to you. I apologise in advance. Okay, so we've got changes to the disposition limits. What has been removed is the 1,000 item limit per label. So it used to be per record label with a disposition review attached, you could only have 1,000 items pending disposition and record of disposal. Once you got over 1,000 for that label, sorry, 1,000,000. I can't read my own numbers. I should have put it in words. That would have helped. Once I got more than 1,000,000 items for that one label, the older ones would start dropping off the bottom. Okay, so we'd lose, so we couldn't guarantee how long we would keep the record of the disposition for. So that limit has gone. The tenant limit of 16 million total items pending review or disposed of is still in existence. Okay. The 5 years that the content remains in the disposition interface is also still a limitation. The record of disposition will remain in the audit log for up to 10 years, depending on the licenses that you have. Okay, there is an advanced audit log add-in license, and I can't remember its name off the top of my head, but that increases the retention period of the audit log. Or at the end of a retention period, you can now specify to run a Power Automate workflow. So your Power Automate workflow is triggered at the end of the retention period. This gives us, instead of the disposition review process, it gives us the ability to have multiple disposition review paths. So we can build that in. It gives us the ability to change the metadata of the document as we go through the disposition review, and or present the metadata we want about the document to the users who are signing off the disposition of the document. It also allows us to customize what permissions that user has to the document as they're reviewing it for disposal. And once we've finished, we can generate a certificate of disposition, and we can store it as a immutable PDF. Yeah, so we've got then a file which is stored in ordinary file storage, an automatically generated certificate of disposition, which isn't subject to those tenant limits of 16 million items in total and 5 years in the interface. It's a document. You can keep it however long you want. And you could automatically apply a retention label of never delete to that certificate as it's generated, again, through that Power Automate flow. So that is a feature that is now out, that Power Automate flow, which I think is probably more useful than the changing of the disposition limits. Okay, passwordless sign-in. If you've not seen it before, this is what it looks like. So if I'm trying to sign into an application, I get a little notification pop up that shows me, okay, what app I'm trying to sign into, roughly where I'm located. That's not correct, by the way. It's never, sometimes it's just not accurate. It's the way our internet works here. And on the screen I'm trying to sign into, there'll be a number for me to put in. All I need to remember is my username, which is my email address. And then I put that number in. Simple. And I can now enable that for multiple accounts. I have about 30 Microsoft 365 accounts across all of the different things that I do. So that is really helpful for me. It's going to save me hours of password looking up and typing in. That means I won't have to keep a record of my passwords either. Much more secure. Please don't tell anyone I keep a record of my password. I'll be thrown out of all the security groups I'm in instantly. Okay. By the way, that little map, in case anyone's trying to work out if I am in Birmingham, I'm not. I'm a bit further north. Okay, I'm Leeds and York area, if anyone's familiar with the geography. And no, I know I don't have a Yorkshire accent because I wasn't born here. Okay, looking back at SharePoint, Stream, Viva and OneDrive and what has been released over the previous quarter. The sensitivity label now shows in the sharing dialog, We've got an activity column in OneDrive. We can search the transcript of videos in Stream on SharePoint, and a retirement date for Classic Stream has been announced. Okay, we have about a year. Let me show you the new things before we talk about what's been switched off. So sensitivity label on a sharing dialog. It's not a big thing, but if you use sensitivity labels to indicate which documents are highly confidential, how your documents are classified, it's a really important thing for users to know when they're trying to share a file. Yeah. What's the classification of this document? It will help them pick appropriate options from the sharing dialog, or not share at all if they shouldn't be. It's not blocking anything, but it is just informing them. Currently only shows up if I'm sharing from OneDrive. It's in the process of rolling out to everywhere else. I got it on a SharePoint site today for the first time. It's very exciting. The activity column has appeared in OneDrive. So if you're working in OneDrive and you're looking at your files, you'll find a column that tells you what's recently happened with that file, who's shared it, who's accessed it, who's changed it. Okay, the idea being here, if I'm sharing my files from my OneDrive, it gives me an indication of what is happening with those files. I don't forget. Here I've got a transcript of a meeting stored in Stream on SharePoint. And the meeting transcript is automatically generated, and I now have this little search box, if my clicker will point at the right thing, where I can search that transcript. Yes, this is a very short transcript. I could probably have found what I was looking for without doing a search, but it was a demo recording to just pick up and show that feature, so it's allowed to be nice and short. I will just point out a couple of other things in here that we've talked about on previous webinars that might be of interest to you. There is also an expiry date on meeting recordings automatically, and I can change that by clicking on that expiry date shown here. Okay, if you've got retention set on the location this recording is stored in this case it is my OneDrive. Okay, that would supersede the expiry date. Okay, so the retention policy would be the thing that controlled when it was deleted, not that expiry date. The default is 60 days. I increased mine to the maximum, which was 99,999 days, which is probably longer than I'm going to be around. Can't remember the exact date, but it's a significant amount of time into the future. Okay. If Stream doesn't have a transcript, if it's an older video that you've got in Stream, then you can automatically now generate those transcripts in Stream on SharePoint as well. I'm talking Stream on SharePoint. And I'm now going to talk about Classic Stream. So when Stream was first released, if I'm brutally honest, SharePoint storage was not fast enough to cope with videos, to give a good video viewing experience. Okay, so Azure Media Services we use to store those files. They're outside of Microsoft 365. We can't set retention labels, we can't set sensitivity labels, we can't use DLP, etc. Okay, so we can't govern them in the same way. So Microsoft has now done a lot of work, not just for this, but done a lot of work on the structure of SharePoint. It's now much faster, much more stable, and able to give the kind of performance that we need from video files. In other words, they play without stopping partway through and buffering. as long as you've got a decent internet connection. If it fails now, it's your internet, not SharePoint. Okay, so we're moving Stream from outside Microsoft 365 inside Microsoft 365, which means the old Stream is going and it will be switched off February 15th, 2024. Okay. If this is the first you've heard about it and you're worried about videos you've got in Stream, please ensure that your IT staff are made aware of this. And there is a link to the announcement of the retirement of Stream Classic in the reference manuals. And there is a migration tool for SharePoint admins to use to migrate the videos from the old service into the new. Okay. Some of them won't need moving, some of them will. So that was SharePoint, Stream, and OneDrive. I'm now going to talk about Microsoft Viva. And there are a number of different enhancements on here. These are mostly premium features. And when we talk about premium with Microsoft Viva, we're talking about paid features. Okay, so some of the Viva functionality is built into your Microsoft 365 subscriptions. Some of them require extra licenses. Now, before I go into these, I thought it would be helpful to just highlight the kind of features that are available in the standard Microsoft 365 plans versus the Viva Premium product, the Viva Suite. Okay, and I will point out the dollars, the $9 per user per month is US dollars. As many Microsoft documents are. Okay, so as we look at these, we've got the Viva Connections is all included. Viva Engage is currently all included. There will be some premium features coming to Viva Engage. Okay, Viva Engage is basically Yammer inside Microsoft Teams. Okay, so if you use Yammer through Microsoft Teams, it used to be called the Yammer Communities app in Teams. It's now called Viva Engage. Okay. Viva Learning, which is our tool to bring learning into our flow of work, is a mixture of both included and then premium features. And the premium features are really about tracking and managing the learning rather than just allowing users to work organically. Viva Topics is all premium. And if you haven't come across Viva Topics before, this is the tool that analyzes the information we have in Microsoft 365 and generates these topics pages from them, so that we don't have to spend hours searching for the information. Viva Insights is probably the one you've seen because it lands in your inbox every day and beats you over the face saying, hey, look, Viva Insights email. Come and have a look at me. But that one is all about analytics of behaviours and helping us do the right thing, helping us be productive, yet keeping our work-life balance appropriate, says she at 11 o'clock at night. Doesn't mean we can't do time zone shifts, does it? Okay, and some of those are premium and some of those are included. Okay, there's slight differences depending on which Microsoft 365 subscription you have, which features are included and which features are not. Okay. And then we have Viva Goals, which is all about organizational goal setting and mapping that, so organizational objective setting, sorry, and mapping that to individual targets and key results that we want to achieve. Okay, and that's again all premium. I've included a link to this document, which also shows you how you can license each of those Viva products separately as well. So the briefing email is getting some enhancements. This is obviously core to everybody. There is actually a short pause in the delivery of these Viva Insights email. You will notice at some point this month, I think probably even tomorrow, that Viva Insights email will stop being delivered. It will disappear for approximately 6 weeks and then come back again. So you'll have forgotten about this by the time it lands again, but you will be able to mark those different sections as favourites or to hide them if it's not useful to you. And also, if you use the Viva Insights app in Teams, you can go into the settings in there and set your favourite and hide options, favourite and snooze options for the different components, and also set what time of day you'd like to receive the email by. Microsoft do tend to fluctuate it a little bit, just so that it's not always landing exactly the same time of day every day, and that is deliberate, so you don't always ignore emails that land at a specific point in time. It's to make sure that you don't always go, oh, that's my Viva Insights email, I can read that later. Okay, so it's not always landing exactly the same time. Otherwise, you might miss other important emails. One of my favourite features that's landed is the quiet time settings. I'm an IT geek. I like gadgets. I have 2 mobile phones and 3 tablets. Sorry. And if I have to go around setting them all on mute, I just don't bother. But now, with these quiet time settings, it will mute my Outlook notifications and my Teams notifications across all of my mobile devices to the same settings. And I only need to set it once centrally. And then if I get a new phone, I don't have to set it on my new phone. Much better idea. If only it did the desktop as well. Thankfully, I can switch that off. If I'm working with Viva Insights Premium license, then as I'm sending my emails, I've also got the recommendation to send during working hours. Okay, and I can adjust the date and time that I actually want to send it on, but it pops up a recommendation when I try and send an email outside of working hours. Okay? So I don't put pressure on my colleagues. Just because I want to work at the weekend doesn't mean they should. The Effective Meeting Insights is another premium feature inside Viva Insights, and this helps me see what habits I've got with attending my meetings. No one believes me that this isn't made up. I don't have, in the last 4 weeks, I had no overlap in any of my meetings. I replied to every invite. I joined every meeting on time. Every meeting ended on time or early. And every meeting I generated had a link. I did do quite a bit of multitasking, but then I'm presenting, so I quite often end up switching between different apps. So I'm not worried about those. Most of my meetings had advance notice. Working hours, yeah, we'll skip over that one. But I've done quite well in those. I also categorize every one of my appointments in my diary. So the Effective Meeting Insights also shows me where I'm spending my time based on the categories I've got in my calendar as well. Now, I said there's premium features coming to Viva Engage. Storyline is not one of them, but the ability to post video updates to your storyline called stories will be premium. Okay, so just to go back, Viva Engage is the new name for the Yammer app inside Microsoft Teams. Okay, and we now have a feature whereby we can post an update to our storyline rather than into a particular community. So rather than it being specific to an all company community or my department community, I can just post an update that's available for anyone in the organisation to see. Okay, so if I compare it to LinkedIn, it's like doing a LinkedIn post rather than posting inside a group. Yeah. Additional premium features are due in the next 3 months. As I mentioned, the video update called Stories and the ability for leaders when they post a message on their storyline or as a video message of Stories to broadcast that message and notify people. Okay, that's going to be called Leadership Corner. Viva Topics, as I identified earlier, is a premium feature. You do have to have a license for Viva Topics. It's not included in any of the Microsoft 365 subscriptions, and it does actually collate information and Microsoft say it generates knowledge from content. Okay, so the idea is it pulls together what I've got in my head with the documents that are in the system into a nice page that everyone can view. And if I mention a topic in a message in Teams using a hashtag, when someone hovers over that hashtag, they see the page. So they see the description of what it is, they see who's a knowledgeable person about it, and they see all the available resources. So they know who to contact, what content we've got, and what it means, without needing to leave the message. Those topics are now also supported in Yammer. So if you use topics in Yammer, those topics will link up with Viva topics as you start using the keywords that are also linked to Viva topics. Okay, so that's integrating topics in Yammer and topics in Teams. Now this is a little GIF. This is running automatically, this mini video, showing you the focus mode. So I'm sure some of you have already seen setting focus time in your calendar using Viva Insights to block out time in your calendar to get your work done, to focus on the tasks you need to do. So focus mode is where you'll get an alert that your focus time is about to start, and it will automatically trigger a focus timer. Will give you the option to run one of the Headspace focus music scenes and also integrate your to-do tasks so you can see which tasks you need to work on. You can select them and say you're working on them. Mute. It'll also mute all your Teams and Outlook notifications at the same time as well. So you can really focus rather than just put a block in your diary that everyone seems to want to ignore. Yeah. If you're using Viva Learning with the premium license, we can now also curate learning paths. What this means is I can pull together multiple pieces of learning content and list them out as a learning path that I want my users to work through, rather than just allowing them to discover various bits of content separately. I can pull it together into a complete journey. Last section on our looking back is Office 365. So generally, I'm looking at features here that run across all of the Office apps, or are not specific to a particular product or feature inside the Office 365 world. So we've got improvements to search. We've got app mentions being used to assign tasks, and we've got a new view of the health dashboard as well. Now, one of the features that came out, probably I think it was around about August, was that when you do a search from the Office 365 homepage, you can pick an option to look at just messages. Now, those messages cover both Outlook and Teams messages. But what's new is the little paperclip. I'm back to Mr. Clippy. Well, not quite. It's just an ordinary paperclip this time. But that paperclip icon is indicating that there is an attachment on that email. Not only that, when I do my search for files, it will find files attached to emails. Now, these are traditional attachments, not just the links. So that's one of the changes. We're getting the traditional attachments showing up, not just the links. Okay. The second enhancement is with regard to that Teams message at the bottom. Now, when these messages first started showing up, if I clicked that message, I went to just that one message. Now, if I click that message, I go to the conversation with that particular message highlighted. Okay, so I don't just get the one message, I get to see it in the context that that message was sent. If you're using Windows 11, the search on your Windows PC is now integrated. It's using the same search, and you have the option to search for work, to filter your search to work. If you use Bing as your search engine in your web browser, if you Google with Bing, then you will find that you have the same options to filter your search as we've seen across here. And the search results will be the same wherever you search from. That might sound like a silly thing to say, but they were actually building from slightly different indexes before. So you might find slightly different results in different searches. Now it's the same. And you'll be pleased to know we haven't lost any results, but all the results are available in all different places you might want to search from now. I like it when things work. It's nice. If you mention somebody in a comment in Excel or Word, it will generate a task to assign to them. And that will be coming to PowerPoint as well, but at the moment is only in Excel or Word. This one's from Excel, and I can see that it's from Excel because it's telling me what cell I put the comment into. Oh, and the button's green. It's blue in Word, and it's the orange for PowerPoint in PowerPoint, as you'd expect. Okay, these tasks, once you create them, are managed by Microsoft To Do, so it goes into the user that I've sent it to, it goes into their Outlook-based tasks, which we can now view through Microsoft To Do. A new page has been added under Health in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. If you're not a Microsoft 365 admin, this probably isn't that interesting to you, but one of the things Microsoft noticed is that new administrators, and especially administrators in smaller organizations, were struggling to find all of the information about updates, if there were problems with outages or systems underperforming. So the idea of this health dashboard is it shows me it all on one page. Far too big for me to fit on a screenshot. There is a lot more around this. And this was actually taken, this screenshot was taken this weekend when there were 1 or 2 issues going on. Normally it all shows healthy, but I've actually managed to get a screenshot with some problems in. Makes a change. I might have to keep this one. So it just allows me to see what's going on so I can give better advice and manage those alerts much more easily. Finish going backwards. We're now going to look forwards. I have 2 slides with lots and lots of options, lots of features on them. And then obviously we will have time for questions as well. So what I've got here are the features that are currently listed as due for release by the end of March, prior to the next Ketchup event on the 19th of April. So theoretically, we should have all of these features by then. Things may change, but we should in Outlook be able to set our working hours for today and the location we're working in. Okay. In the hybrid working world, we seem to work from lots of different places, sometimes the office, sometimes a coffee shop, sometimes from home. So it's useful for our colleagues to understand that. I like the second one though. If I go to my appointment in my Outlook calendar, I can access the Teams meeting chat. Number of times I go to the appointment in Outlook and I can't see the chat. It would be very helpful to have the chat. And that's going to be quite useful, I think. That Teams Premium that we talked about earlier, that is due for release in February. So we'll be able to add that in. If you're sharing your slides into a meeting with PowerPoint Live, you'll be able to zoom the slides. One of the reasons I don't share with PowerPoint Live very much is because I like to zoom in on my slide to make it appear bigger on screen for people, and we'll be able to do that going forward. Video filters allows me to put banners and things around on my video. Apparently you can even integrate it with Snapchat video filters, so you can turn into a cat if you want to, or whatever Snapchat filter you fancy using. Busy on busy user settings allow you to set what behavior you want if you get a phone call while you're busy. At the moment, the busy on busy setting will either do nothing, send your call routing as per your unanswered calls, or sound a busy tone to the person trying to call you. And that is admin controlled. As a user, we don't have control over that, but we will do. It will be in the settings in the Teams app. Okay, if you've raised your hand in a meeting, not your real hand, but your virtual hand in the meeting, and then you come off mute to speak, you will get a prompt to automatically prompt you to lower your hand. So you don't leave it up, but you'll have the option to leave it up if you need to. Okay, but you'll jump to the bottom of the list. OneNote will replace the wiki feature in Microsoft Teams and also the meeting notes. So if you use meeting notes or you've used the wiki inside a Microsoft Teams team, you will need to replace them. The other thing is we'll be able to mention everyone, and that's useful if you're in a group chat rather than in a Teams channel. We can set sensitivity labels so they only apply to Excel, Word or PowerPoint, the client application. Set a default label for a SharePoint site, and have a bar appear in my Office documents to manage the sensitivity of the document, see why it's sensitive. Now, we used to have this with an older version of the tool, so this is really nice to see that coming back. It's actually really much more useful than it sounds. Greater integration with Power Automate for purview and compliance features and information protection. Lots more communication classifiers for communication compliance, so spotting corporate sabotage messages, money laundering and others. Information barriers version 2, which an information barrier is there to block communication between different segments of the organisation. So we're getting additional controls around that. I'm hoping that's going to give us some flexibility. So we can say investment banking can't talk to personal banking unless they're in a company-wide meeting. Okay, because at the moment with information barriers, you couldn't all join a company-wide meeting, an all-hands meeting. Automatically apply a sensitivity label to an email based on the attachment. So if you attach a top secret document, your email will be flagged automatically as top secret as well. Oh, I think my co-organizer thing might be in the wrong category. That's a Teams feature. If you're a meeting co-organizer, you can manage your breakout rooms as well. At the moment, you have to be given permission to be a co-organizer in the meeting and manage the breakout room separately. I've got to give you 2 permissions to do everything. It'll now be 1. Okay, SharePoint, Stream, Viva and OneDrive. So you may have heard of Microsoft Syntex. Microsoft Syntex is again an AI-driven tool that helps us analyze documents, categorize them. It's also going to offer us the ability to do backups of data in Microsoft 365 as well. Okay, and we're getting a pay-as-you-go subscription to Microsoft Syntex. If that's whetted your appetite, if you want to know more, we do actually have a Syntex course coming soon. So watch this space. There'll be some announcements for a full course on Syntex in the next few months. I don't know exact dates, so I won't make any promises. I talked about the coherent search across Bing, SharePoint and Microsoft 365. That's due to roll out in the next 3 months as well. Workflows, the older workflows in SharePoint will be able to be migrated into Power Automate flows. If you've worked in SharePoint for a long time, I've worked with SharePoint since 2003. So if you've worked with SharePoint for a long time, this is actually quite an emotional time because we're going to finally lose workflows. We're going to move fully over to Power Automate. From a retention perspective and records management perspective, we are going to be hiding the preservation hold library. So the preservation hold library is where documents are stored if a user deletes it when it's subject to a retention policy or label. Okay, that is no longer going to show in the site contents. That library is still going to exist. If you know the address, you'll still be able to access it, and we'll still find the content in there through eDiscovery. And also we'll still have the option in the settings, if you have the records management feature, to prevent users deleting content so it doesn't go into the preservation hold library. That feature already exists. It's just the visibility of that is going to disappear. The library itself, to be clear. So Viva Connections, we've got an updated app coming, which includes the links to all of the different Viva products. So you don't have to have what feels now like about 10 million Viva apps down your side rail in Microsoft Teams. You'll only need one to get to all of Viva. Viva Connections will finally work on iPads. We've got a tool called Answers, which is very similar to Q&A in Yammer, that's going to be coming to Viva as well. The ability to merge topics when the names are similar in Viva Topics, and also to set categories. So this is a product, this is a customer, to help understand what those topics are that are being found. Topics in Teams channels, and Viva Goals, where we can set our objectives. We'll be able to integrate that with tasking in Planner. We also have mind maps in Visio for the web. Visio for the web is included in every Microsoft 365 subscription. Your apps in Teams will start working in other Office apps, including Outlook. Now, from a developer's perspective, this means they only need to build one app and you can use it from your favorite tool rather than having to build them separately. And something that we've been waiting for a long time, about 3 years ago, Microsoft announced they were going to be retiring Project Online, and the new tool would be Project for the Web. Now, we've had Project for the Web for a little while, but especially with COVID hitting, Project for the Web didn't get the development that it needed to have the feature parity to replace Project Online. And we're now starting to see lots of those features starting to hit the roadmap and due to be rolling out. So I expect, as well as those, we're probably getting closer to an announcement as when Project Online is going to go end of life. Okay, bye-bye Microsoft Project. Scary thoughts. Any questions? Now, just before people start throwing their questions at me, if you are watching this webinar as the recording and you're not watching it live, so it's not 11:30 at night in the UK, then or what, you must be 9:30 in the morning now in Adelaide, is that correct? We started about an hour or so, maybe a little bit later. Anyway, if you're watching the recording, then please do scan this QR code to submit your questions. And again, if you're watching live at the moment, if you come up with questions later after the webinar, you have until the 1st of February to submit your questions, and then I'll prepare all of the answers and those will be shared out as well. Okay, so that form is open from the 25th of January until the 1st of February, as it says on the screen. So please take a screenshot if you need it watching the webinar live, or pause the video if you need it watching the recording to actually get hold of that link if you need to. So to people here today, live, if you have questions, please raise your hand or use the chat to pose them. No one ever wants to ask the first question.
You covered it too well. can we say?
Hey, I'll take that. To be perfectly honest, it doesn't have to be about the topics that we've touched on today. If you've got any questions about Microsoft 365 in general, then please feel free to add those. If it's not something I know, I can go away and look it up. Okay, so Heather's asking about the 16 million limit that I mentioned earlier. Let me just go back and find the correct topic. Okay, so we're talking about this particular bullet point. The tenant limit of 16 million total items remains for disposition. So if we've got a retention setting through a label that requires approval for the disposition of the document before it's deleted, then Microsoft 365 retains a list of 16 million, sorry, get it right, 16 million documents for the entire tenant. Okay, that have either been approved for deletion or are pending approval for deletion, or have had their retention period extended, the retention label changed. So they've gone through or are waiting to go through that disposition review, having reached end of life. Once you have more than 16 million items in that list, then the older ones start dropping off the bottom. Or if you've got under 16 million, once it's 5 years since it was approved for deletion, it will start dropping off the list of the disposed items. Okay. And we've got a follow-up comment to that saying, how does that work in a shared government tenancy? This is the problem if you've got a single tenant shared between multiple departments or multiple sub-organisations. That 16 million limit is still the same limit because it's a tenancy limit, and Microsoft are not currently have no plans to change that. So that's where the Power Automate option is going to need to come in for you on that there. Okay. We've got a follow-up question saying, do we get a notification that this is happening? Presumably relating to the clearing out of the disposition list. No. There's no notification that that is going to happen. Okay. A separate question, do I have any thoughts on Microsoft and Chat GPT? I personally quite like the AI features, but I think we have to be responsible how we use it. And I think it's important that as more and more of the features that we work with in computing start using artificial intelligence to generate content and to help us put presentations together. Now, I make heavy use of the designer feature in PowerPoint as I'm building my presentation here. I think it's really important that we're open and honest about that. One of the reasons I think the chat AI feature is getting such a lot of notice at the moment is it's probably the first time consumers generally have seen this kind of a product working. We've had AI features from an IT professional perspective that we've used for quite a long time inside the Microsoft Cloud space, but they haven't been really obvious and really easy to see and use. I actually used it to write my sister-in-law's Christmas card this year. But I did actually put on the Christmas card that the greeting was generated by Chat GPT to be that transparent that that is what I've done. Okay, so I think that's important. I think one of the reasons Microsoft is wanting to link up with that system is because it's implemented that consumer-facing AI really, really well. It's super easy to use. You don't really need to know what you're doing. If you've not heard of it, just open your web browser and do a quick search, and I'm sure you'll find it really quickly. Any more questions from anyone?
Seems as though you've covered everything there.
It's a good thing. In that case, I will leave this up for just another couple of seconds and then we'll talk to you about what's next. Okay, so it's going to disappear. So if you want the screenshot of the link to the form, please take it now. Going, gone. And we'd like you back next time, please. Okay, if this was useful for you, please do sign up for the next session. It will be run live on the 19th of April at 9 AM Central Time. So that's US. With the recording available from the 26th of April. If there are any particular topics that you would like us to cover in the Ketchups, please do let us know. Okay, usually takes me a week to 10 days prior to the event to prep the webinar, so please do give us plenty of notice. Don't send me at 2 minutes before we're due to start. Probably can't help out then, but we're here to help, so please do make sure you let us know. And again, I'll wait for a couple of seconds and leave that on screen before I hand back to Kiralee to close us out. Me. So, over to you, Kiralee.
Thank you so much. That was really good. So we've got our LinkedIn and Twitter codes there as well if you want to follow us on those. Our website there to have a look at any of our courses that we've got. And if you did miss that QR code for the next Ketchup, you'll find that under webinars on our website as well. So you can just sign up as you did for today's, and you'll receive a recording about a week after the live session. So I think we've probably held everyone's time for long enough, and Sarah, you probably want to go to bed as well, so we might sign off and let everyone have their day back.